Hi, you're watching Terminal 2W, and I'm Greg Robinson. Let's talk about Spirit Airlines. There's a lot going on with them, and some people love them. Well, I'm not sure anyone loves them, and a lot of people are upset at them. But more importantly, I want to talk about what's been going on with them. Prior to 2020, Spirit Airlines, as well as a few other ultra low cost carriers, were very successful in the US market. They were eroding traffic from the full service airlines, and the low cost carriers such as Southwest Airlines and JetBlue were starting to not know what to do about these people nipping at their feet. Well, then COVID came. Just prior to COVID, Spirit Airlines was earning a healthy amount of revenue, nearly 4 billion, and more importantly, a fairly healthy net profit. By all measures, they were looking very, very successful. In COVID, no airline knew exactly how to respond. And in point of fact, not knowing how to respond led to a lot of airlines making some tough choices. The truth is some of the airlines serving the leisure markets, as well as overly served routes, say on the East Coast, and in particular the routes leading from the Northeast to the Southeast, there wasn't many solutions for that. With no traffic, particularly no vacation traffic, you had no choices because you had no routes established elsewhere, say where business travelers might use you. At the end of 2020, at the end of COVID, Spirit Airlines had lost more than half its revenue. It had had losses nearly $500 million, and no other airline was succeeding any more than they were. Everybody was in disarray, but airlines, they worked at it. And in point of fact, by 2022, most airlines had recovered considerably. Full service premium airlines had decided to compete with these ultra low cost airlines such as Spirit, Frontier, and Allegiant by offering basic economy fares. And frankly, they offered a kicker there. In many of those fares, they would offer, say, a free checked bag and sometimes some assigned seating, sometimes no assigned seating, or free carry-on. In any point of it, they became a cheaper choice than these ultra low-cost carriers. Now, they also only had a few of these seats on each route and on each flight, but nonetheless, it began to erode into their fortunes. JetBlue, who's never had a very strong management, has been struggling for a long time to earn a industry average profit on their revenues. This largely has to do with the fact that at the end of 2022, JetBlue didn't really have a market where they weren't getting eaten or their fares or prices were getting eroded by both full service airlines such as Delta, American Airlines, and United. And then on the other side, the ultra low cost carriers such as Spirit, Frontier, less Frontier than Spirit, and then Allegiant. And in point of fact, Southwest Airlines has been struggling in a similar way, although not to quite the same losses. Now, at the end of 2022, Spirit had reached a point of losses where they needed a merger partner. While their revenues had gone up, and in fact, they had gone all the way up to over $5 billion, their losses had also gone up considerably as well. I believe their losses by the end of 2022 were nearly, they were just over $500 million. Now, these losses aren't sustainable, particularly for an airline that's facing so much competition. So, in looking for merger partners, they went to the well where they thought they best had a partner, and that was Frontier Airlines. Frontier Airlines, led by Indigo Partners, decided they wanted this match. And in fact, it looked like a good merger because it was complementary. Frontier had spent a lot of focus and time on the Western United States as well as the Midwest, and they did have some routes extending into the East. And Spirit had a great focus on the South and Southeast and a little bit in the Northeast. And Spirit also had a valuable connection to the Caribbean and South America. But then JetBlue saw an opportunity to eliminate its worst problem, Spirit Airlines. So JetBlue entered the fray and began to bid for Spirit as well. Spirit, never expecting to be the focus of a bidding war, found itself between two people who were willing to pay a lot for their airline. Shareholders at Spirit were ecstatic, and the price kept going up. JetBlue saw a very defensive mood here. They could eliminate a lot of competition, as you can see from these route maps. JetBlue and Spirit have very overlapping routes in the same areas. So eliminating that competition and consolidating those networks meant that JetBlue had an opportunity perhaps to start earning a good profit on those routes. And in addition, it could use those aircraft and resources to deploy to routes in other parts of the country and perhaps grow their network. It was for JetBlue a defensive move and a small opportunity to try and reverse their fortunes. They offered a high premium, and Frontier Airlines owners, Indigo partners, backed away. They knew the deal had gotten way too rich and that it would be very hard to earn a profit off of that price. JetBlue made a guarantee to Spirit that they would not back out of this merger, and they didn't make it contingent on legal approval for the merger either. They went into the deal, and I will say most observers of the airline industry thought this was a bit nuts because JetBlue was as aware as anyone of the fact that the prospects for a successful merger here, particularly in the legal system, were not very high. They went into courts, they fought hard, the Justice Department sued them, and at the end of the day in 2024, the merger was disallowed. JetBlue had to pay $69 million to Spirit, and Spirit found itself without a merger partner and 2 years farther down the road. Not having good prospects from that point, they filed bankruptcy, if for no other reason to preserve the business and an opportunity to win a merger partner, and went looking for a suitor again. Now, they went back to Frontier because Frontier, after all, had offered a great premium for this airline. But Frontier no longer saw a business that was worth buying nearly as much as they did 2 years prior. And that's the problem with the airline industry. Things change very rapidly at times. Frontier made an honest offer, and frankly, from where I sit, it was a reasonable offer. I don't think that they were underpaying. I certainly don't think that they were paying a premium either. And they've had no other people come to offer them a price. Right now, Spirit's rejecting that offer and saying it's not enough. And honestly, I think that's shareholders in a boardroom who are wishing they could have another suitor in the business and have another bidding war. That's unlikely at this point, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What do I think will happen with Spirit? I think they'll find a merger partner, and honestly, I think it's going to be Frontier Airlines. I don't think it'll be Allegiant Airlines because Allegiant has a different business model, and they're working at things from a very different perspective. More importantly, they've demonstrated that they're willing to conserve their cash and try and manage their business better than the other guys. And they do that by not being loud or shouty or anything else. Now, they have the same unpleasantness of a lot of ultra low-cost carriers, but they do it quietly. And the reputation, frankly, isn't nearly as bad. Let's talk about how Spirit got here. The fact of the matter is there were a number of things complicating things. First, Spirit's reputation. Spirit has a reputation as an airline that's loud, a little gaudy, that you can expect all kinds of unsavory people on the plane. And frankly, there's a lot of memes and a lot of videos out there showing the worst behavior out of people on Spirit Airlines flights. Now, that doesn't mean every flight's bad, and it doesn't mean Spirit intends the experience to be bad for anybody, but it is notable that Spirit is issuing rules about customer behavior and appearance now that from most airlines' perspectives, might even appear to be a little draconian. This means they recognize they have a reputation problem and they're trying to clean that up. Second, it's the cost to fly. That's a problem for them now. Now, 5 years ago and even farther back, they were competitive by offering a bare bones fare, but they've debundled every fare. And this means that when you go to fly them, your first experience seems like you're getting a great deal. But in point of fact, after you fly them once or twice or perhaps 3 times, here's what's happened. You realize that you paid a lot of money for an airfare that you thought was going to be much cheaper. 2, you probably had a service experience that wasn't very good. And 3, you probably paid so much that you've started looking at the other airlines and realized that you could have saved money even on a full service flight from another major carrier such as Delta or American or United. Third, this is a strange market for ultra low cost carriers. Now, there's a lot of ultra low cost carriers in other parts of the world, but there's something that people often overlook about the United States, and that's this. The distances flown in places such as Europe or Southeast Asia are generally much shorter than they are for distances flown in the United States. The average segment length in the United States is much longer, and that means people stay on the plane longer. And the longer you're on an aircraft, the more comfort becomes important. Now, when you look at, say, an airline like Ryanair in Europe, often people are flying for as little as an hour to many of their destinations. And if they're flying a little bit longer than that, it's less than 2 hours. And people are willing to do a lot to save money for something that for them is a short bus trip. Now, in the United States, you're often flying for 2 to 3 to 4 hours across the United States to get to your vacation destinations. And that's a very different experience on an airline with cramped legroom, unsavory people, perhaps a service product that isn't very catering to your needs. And honestly, it's painful when a flight leaves late, and Spirit doesn't have a great reputation for on-time departures. I'm not sure that there is a market for a lot of ultra low cost carriers here. And in point of fact, I think we have too many at this point. We have three. And if the truth be known, given the service products that are available, I don't know why Spirit is necessarily going to exist. Frontier is a better partner for them. And don't get me wrong, I don't say that Frontier is a much better product, but I think it's a little bit better. And I think it's a business managed a lot better. And that means they can take what Spirit has and turn it into something that likely builds a better network airline across the United States. And that's good for our economy. Now, don't get me wrong. When Justice Department denies mergers, they often cite competition as a problem, and they cite competition as hurting the consumer. Less competition, higher fares hurt the consumer. But in point of fact, there's one thing that I'd like you to take away from this, and that's this. Bankruptcies hurt consumers more. And by that, I mean there is a reasonable proposition for allowing mergers in the United States. Spirit should be allowed to merge with someone. It should be a viable network. And hopefully it builds a network that is competitive against the other big four that cross the entire nation. By the big four, I mean Southwest Airlines, I mean American, I mean Delta, and I mean United Airlines. We could stand to have a fifth that has a network across the country and competes with those airlines. That's good for customers. But when a bankruptcy happens, people lose money. More importantly, they suffer a big impact to their lives in the form of not being able to take vacations or frankly, just stress. And we don't want that either. Healthy airline markets should actually allow the airlines to earn a profit, but at the same time, it should allow passengers to experience some competition and the lowest fares possible. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching Terminal 2W. And remember this, if you ever take travel advice from me, you're going to probably end up on an airplane.